success is, a straight line. It's not, it's a zigzagged, crazy Jackson Pollock painting. That's pretty much like the time I had a couple of years, you're 25 and you're feeling like existential dread, and you're seeing people that are younger than you having amazingly successful careers. Someone might tell you, oh, you might be a late bloomer. You might exceed in your dreams later on in life. You're not like ready to necessarily hear that.
A lot of the reason you've been successful or found opportunities in your career is because you've hustled and you've gone out of your way to build a relationship or reach out to somebody. And I think that's kind of, it's not a hard thing to do, but that little extra effort that you took is what made you stand out from the other 90% of the people that are trying to do the same thing, or at least signed up for the course that you went through in your music school, right? Well, welcome to the podcast today. My name is Jason Tonioli, and my special guest today is Steve Matthew Carter. Steve is a Nashville-based media composer Steve, you've done a ton of TV sync placements. You actually did a Super Bowl ad, which I think is way, way cool, about a year ago. And you've done you've done some film stuff. You've done just a lot of cool projects, a lot of TV type of stuff. I've noticed a lot of reality TV shows. You've had a lot of your stuff in there, but most recently, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is you just helped with it's like a thriller, not really a horror film, but called Gazer. And right before we got on this podcast, I was listening to it, and I think I messaged you, and it literally was freaking me out. It was unnerving. In a really healthy way. I mean, you nailed it on that music, but wanted to bring you on here and just have you share your story. And I think every one of us has a unique story to share, but yours and how you ended up from probably, when you were in diapers until, now you're doing this like thriller, scary. It's not, I don't even know how to describe it. Is unnerving the right word for it, Steve? How should I describe this thing?
I think that I'm gonna replace my middle name now with unnerving.
Unnerving
I
Carter.
enjoy it. It's comforting for me. Well, thanks for having me, Jason. I really appreciate being on the podcast. I'm a fan of what you're doing, so it's really an honor to speak with you. Yeah, I mean, my story is not totally different than most people's. I sort of came into music in high school. I picked up some bands. My family was like super supportive. They bought me my first drum set when I was like 13 years old, and put together a couple like kind of neighborhood bands that kind of went nowhere. Played some backyard shows, and I think things started to kind of kick off for me when I picked up a guitar, started songwriting when I was about 15. Like I wanted to be Bob Dylan. That was kind of like my world was, my headspace was. I think that was super important for me because like I from an early age, I thought about storytelling. Songwriting is all about storytelling. And I think as a composer, that's kind of like the way that we should be speaking. And so kind of started writing my own tunes. They were, not very good, but it was early gestation period for me. And then I got really kind of lucky early on when I was 17 or 18. A friend of mine that I grew up with, his name's Jared Kahn. His sister was out in LA, and she was working with Adam McKay on the film The Other Guys, and they needed a piece of music for a scene, a bar scene between Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell. And I think she sort of went, "Oh, maybe go to my brother and try to help him out." And so Jared came to me because I had a little Pro Tools rig, and we wrote something, and it got placed, and it sort of opened up the world for me, like this music for visual media thing that sort of I was like, whoa, I didn't even know this was a job. And it was like the first time I ever spoke to a music supervisor. We didn't even have a BMI account. I remember having to hook all of that up. And it was just a wonderful experience working with him. He and I are still collaborators. We still write library music today, which is great. He's out in LA now. But it was the first sort of seed that was planted for me early on, like, oh, there's a world here, like to kind of do this. And then I went off to college. I went to a school in New Jersey, music school, studied audio production and music business, sound design, radio production. I started a band with a couple other people from like our music business club, and we all had like very similar aesthetic vibes. Like we we were really into Radiohead and Death Cab for Cutie and Coldplay. But most importantly, like we treated this band like a job. Like we were like,
Mm.
this is what we want to do. And I think it's important to do that for some bands. Like, it is a job. And so uh, we toured, we played, like we opened for some really really interesting, diverse acts, and we went out to Cleveland and made a record. Jim Word produced for like Fiona Apple and Incubus, and that was just like that was my first professional kind of music business experience. Was singing and songwriting for this band and like organizing shows and creating merch for ourselves. We were very like insular community in what we were able to do. And then by 22, 23, the band fizzled out like most do. And I sort of was left like, what am I going to do with my life? And I went on Craigslist and I applied for a job to intern for a composer in the New York City like advertising world who became a dear friend and a mentor for me. His name is Doug Hall. He has done like hundreds and hundreds of advertising spots, and he took me like under his wing when I was really young and like didn't know anything. And I started working for his company called Propeller Music. Uh, at first, it was just organizing the music library, interfacing with other composers. Um, then a little bit of business development. Took me around to like the New York City advertising world. Learned like how to talk to creative directors and copywriters. And then unfortunately, that situation sort of didn't work out. We were a small company, so like we couldn't keep up with some of the bigger music houses, but stayed in touch with Doug, and still to this day I'm friends with him. Um, and then I spent a little time sort of bouncing around in a few different like studio instances. I had a whole nother side quest where I wanted to be a pop songwriter at that time, the 2022, 2013, 2012, 2013, rather, excuse me. And so I started writing with artists in the New York area and doing studio work. And I look at that time for me as kind of lost period a little bit, like a little bit of the limbo. And I think it's like really important for people to be okay with having gaps in their creative career. Like it's, that thing where it's like success is, a straight line. It's not, it's a zigzagged, crazy Jackson Pollock painting. That's pretty much like the time I had a couple of years. You're 25 and you're feeling like existential dread, and you're seeing people that are younger than you having amazingly successful careers. You're not real. Someone might tell you, oh, might be a late bloomer. You might, you know, exceed in your dreams later on in life. You're not like ready to necessarily hear that. So that was that time for me where I was just bouncing around and doing a lot of like non-musical activities as well. And so I finally just decided I wanted to kind of jump back into the music library world and start composing. And I met a company called House Music, Haus, in New York City, and they were writing for the show American Pickers, and I just auditioned for them, and I got to write like 5 or 6 seasons of that show, and it was awesome. It was like my first job. We weren't making a ton of money upfront or anything like that, but it was like my first time working on a TV show and talking with the showrunners through our music house, and we were supplying like bins and bins of music to the editors. But it was like, I was getting cues on that program, and I love the show. It's still a wonderful show, I think. And but it was great experience for me to like jump into the world, because I sort of teetered with it for a while, and then finally I just kind of dove headfirst in. And all while I was doing that, I also just started DMing directors that were at my level on Instagram and just saying, "Hey, I'll score your film for a sample library," or some little bit, like, and just trying to gain. I didn't even have a website yet. I was very, very like kind of low stakes, but that's okay. Like that's an okay place to start. You don't need a huge presentation. You can start with a SoundCloud link and 5 tracks that you're emulating your favorite composer. That's totally fine. And
Yeah.
I was able to meet some friends that way, and basically rode that wave to where I'm at right now, doing more feature work, doing more library work as well too. But that's pretty much like the arc of my upbringing and early kind of career.
Well, you've done some projects that a lot of people just dream about, I mean, some of the placements you've had have been amazing, but, I mean, as you go rewind the clock back to who was you said about 2011, 2010, when you were a little bit lost, if you could go back and kinda give yourself some advice back then or, wherever the clock is that you're like, "Man, if somebody coulda just kinda told me, do these things, that would've made a huge difference," what advice would you give yourself at this point now?
Yeah. I think I think I would say to myself, it's okay. It's okay to figure yourself out a little bit. It's okay to figure out like what your style like to me, the big thing that I think I needed to develop was my own style and my own aesthetic and my own choices. And the decisions that I make are going to be the thing that other people are going to want to work with me on. Basically, my aesthetic, my worldview. And if you can start nurturing that when you're younger, instead of trying to emulate so many other people or feel lost, I think that is something I would have loved to have maybe gotten to the root of a little bit quicker. But also, that's an everyday examination for me. Its style is something that kind of happens over time, and you learn it by working with different people and being in different situations. Um, I think also just like communication skills. I wasn't the best communicator, and I think that's like essential to working, especially on scoring work. I mean, being able to deal with different scenarios, these different kind of people within the ranks of what you're working on is so crucial. So developing tact and communication is like essentially what I would have maybe like told myself.
Interesting. And I know, I mean, so you said you'd gone to college and university for music. I'm curious as you look back on that program versus how, I mean, the industry is evolving, and I think just education in general's going through a massive shift right now. I mean, you can go buy a course from Hans Zimmer if you're wanting to learn how to score films for like $100 these days, and and it seems like everybody wants to sell you a course on how to do the thing, right? What's what's your as you look on kind of if you were starting out in the music business today, like a young, let's say you're an 18, 20-year-old kid, what do you feel like is some of the most important steps that somebody in that situation needs to do, today if you were starting out knowing what you know now?
I would identify the types of people that you want to work with and go hang out with them. And like kind of try to live in the rooms or virtual rooms of where those people are and hang with them. And like that's easier said than done, but it's really, networking is such an ugly word. I don't love it all in that. I'd rather call it friend collecting. That's kind of my MO with it. So I think being able to find people at your local university and offer to work with them. These are the people that you're going to rise with. These are the people that are on your level. And with Gazer, the film that I just did, I've known Ryan for 20 years. We've worked together since we were like in college together, and we knew each other. And I always knew he wanted to be a director, even though we were doing music together. But we spoke that same language, and I just knew he was eventually going to make a film. And so, you know, it just happened to be at the pandemic time. They were Ryan and Ariel were both kind of at a critical point in their life, and they just decided this is the time to make that movie. And I there was no other choice. They were going to kind of work with me, and so it was such a great experience because the process was like it was a movie that we kind of wanted to see. It's a film called Gazer. It's paranoid thriller about a woman, a young mother with this brain condition called dyschronometria, where she zones out and time elapses. And there's so much you can do there musically with time and playing with rules of time. And so when we started talking about the film, it was like we just we had that common language because we had spent time together, and we had like grown up together and had the same sensibilities. And then this is very uncommon, I think, but I started writing music immediately from the script phase. And they had no film connections. Ariel was working at the Angelica Film Center, and she had some agent background, but they raised the money themselves. We shot the film on $80,000 budget,
Whoa.
nights and weekends for 2.5 years on film too, which is a crazy decision. But they were so committed to it, and I could just see early on from where they were. They brought me in early on, and I was hopefully able to understand their vision. And that's why we started working on music early on. And that music was kind of played to the cast and crew on set. And that became a tether throughout that 2.5 year process because, it's a movie being shot over 2.5 years. That's crazy. How can you do that? Well, they didn't have the money to do that. They had to wait till they had money. And so the music was at least the thing keeping the crew in their headspace, like kind of, this is the movie we're making. Okay, this is what we're making because you're going for such long stretches of time. And then eventually, scenes started to come in, and I was able to kind of write the picture about like 30% of the way in. But to answer your original question, like Ryan is someone that I just knew early on. Like he was my beyond just being my friend, he was like a soul collaborator for me. And like he's someone where I will, if he ever, calls me to work on anything, he's the first person I'll pick up for. And I'll dismiss work to work with him again because I feel such a strong connection to him as a creator. And I think as a young person, it's easier said than done. But like, find your friends who are talented and gifted, and make something with them. Whether that's an album, whether it's a film, whether it's a play. Find people you enjoy being with, and create that thing that you feel is missing in the world. Don't wait for permission.
Well, I think there's the saying that you become the average of the 6 people you spend the most time around. I don't know who said that, I think it's very, very true. And I love how you call that kind of friend gathering versus just trying to, I mean, it's almost, I think with friendship, there's something in it for each. It's like a mutual thing. It's a friend. Yeah. Whereas sometimes I feel like, if you call it networking or just I mean, I guess relationship building, but oftentimes people, you can tell when somebody's not like, they're just in it for themselves, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
it's like this one-sided friendship, and we've all had those situations, and it just feels awkward, and a lot of times we'll still, people are kind and we're helpful and all that, but it just, those types of relationships and friendships don't stand the test of time.
I think it's being a good hang is like an essential life skill. I think in many different industries, not just the music media world. I think being a good person to be around, being empathetic, having some humility, asking questions, learning from people. Like I'm often just grabbing coffee here with people that I haven't worked with just to kind of learn their world a bit more. And it's like at the end of it, it's like, hey, I like spending time with you. I like what you're doing, and keep in touch. And maybe our paths cross at some point. But looking at it looking at it as gaining friends and learning from people as opposed to this, like, I need to kinda network and rub elbows with the power players and stuff. It just feels icky to me. I don't know why. I don't love it.
Well, and I think a lot of times, just try I we were just having a conversation earlier today with somebody about, when you figure out who your people are and who you're called to serve, there's I'm like building a product, or I'm trying to sell a thing. Like, selling's a lot of times looked at as a bad word, or like, this was a musician I was talking to. He's like, I'm a terrible salesman. But what was interesting is that we had the conversation. I could tell that he loved to help people, and he literally would do anything to help somebody and serve that person. And I think the key thing is, as people are figuring out how to build friendships, relationships, is go ask what you can do to serve and help somebody else, and what'll happen. Like, you think about some of those bigger players, if somebody comes and helps them, and is just there selflessly serving and helping somebody, when there's an opportunity, they're going to give it to you, because it wasn't about, I'm just doing this thing for you because I'm hoping you're going to, something comes around. But in general, if you do enough of that, karma's a thing. Good things will happen, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I wanna believe that that's, a part of it. I mean, I think it's also just like it's like if you don't see something in your community or you feel like there's something missing in your community, whether that's your local city or, your online community, because most of my connections have come from even online work, which isn't like, I mean, I have friends that I've never met in person that I speak with on the regular. But if you feel like you're in a lost place and you don't see something from your community, like create it, try to be the start of something. Like, you know, create a club where there's other composers and you guys get together and have beers and talk about it. And don't look at your people around you as competitors. Look at them as collaborators or, you know, people you can learn from or people you can hang out with, and you'll get something from that. I want to believe that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, back early on in my career, I was in the banking world, and I had the opportunity to go to multiple different university type settings for banking school. So, I mean, I mean, I've got too much school behind me, but this would be like a 2 or 3 year type of program to go, I call it be bankified and really learn all about banking. But what was interesting with that, as I look back, you would you could identify who the A players were, the people who were showing up and they were just, I don't know whether it was they were smarter, but you knew they gave more effort towards stuff. And even at that time, I would, try and, how do I get to know that person or what can I learn from them? It was more of a let's gather the flock together, so we can all help each other. And I can still remember I'd organize like little group calls with all these people at other banks around the country to share our best ideas, kind of a little mini mastermind. And it was huge to be able to get get the smart people in the room that wanted to do more, that weren't just like, oh, I'm here at school, my mom makes me, there's a lot of people that are just, I would say even 50% of the world, it feels like they go to class or they go to university or whatever it is, and they're there, and I guess they pass the class, but frankly, they're not gonna change the world in any, they're just not motivated. So I think what I also hear from you is, a lot of the reason you've been successful or found opportunities in your career is because you've hustled and you've gone out of your way to build a relationship or reach out to somebody, and I think that's kind of, it's not a hard thing to do, but that little extra effort that you took is what made you stand out from the other 90% of the people that are trying to do the same thing, or at least signed up for the course that you went through in your music school, right? You were doing more, and because it was fun and you enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah. I have a very atypical. I've always looked at my career as like the composers that I admired are like people that came from the pop music world. Johnny Greenwood, Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, John Burbayan did Eternal Sunshine. I never felt like the path for me was the traditional. I love love John Williams. Like I didn't grow up sort of like falling in love with that music and knew at 4 years old when I watched Star Wars the first time that that was like what I wanted to do. It kind of took like, the rock approach. And so I sort of have a very atypical career in that way. It was a lot of learning and figuring out, but I think I can maybe like say that like I've been lucky enough to meet people that have brought the best out of me. In the production music world too, it's not just soloists libraries. There's dear friends that also are playing in bands and touring and doing that as well. It's just like just identifying what you're really good at and just kind of perfecting that. If you're a great guitar player, like write the best guitar focused tunes you can, whether that's in the production music world or in your scoring, if it calls for it, like lean into the things that you like and gravitate towards. And I think that that's kind of uh a recipe for success. But I think having mentors helps as well too. And so like, because I didn't go the assistant composing route or I didn't have sort of a conservatory background, I'm not negating that at all too. I think that's incredibly exceptional. And I think there's so many talented people that come through those paths too. I just maybe have always identified like the people that I want to work with, um, are maybe more of like I've always felt like I want to be like an indie auteur guy. I want to work with directors that are like they are in control. They know what they want. They're very type A, and they are like, this is how I see my story and my vision. And I feel like those are the people I kind of want to service and write for. And I'm just like lucky now that like having this project Geezer has opened up like a door to that because that's what it was working with Ryan. It was like he knew what he wanted. He told me early on that we wanted this like melodic theme to kind of come throughout the film. And we have this melody that gets hummed by one of the characters, Cynthia, Frankie's daughter in the film, and she hums that melody and then it kind of exposes itself into the score and it deconstructs as Frankie's material kind of world starts to kind of because she has this brain condition and she's also now a detective in a way without spoiling too much. Um, and so just working with Ryan on that was amazing and just developing what that sound was going to be and how were we going to reintroduce the melody the third or fourth time through and make it a little bit different so it wasn't kind of exhaustive for the audience. And so, you know, those are like I I I kind of I have a good idea of like where I want to be. It's just you know, going to those places, going to those sources I'm excited to hopefully I'm just excited to hopefully meet more people, like that's
Yeah.
kind of my you know.
What and I think, the situation you had where you had this music that kinda essentially set the mood on the set probably for a lot of these artists. I mean, that's a very cool scenario, and having listened to this, some of the songs on the soundtrack, I can see how that literally would just set the tone for that. I mean, I can't even think of a better way to, like, have an actor go into a scene after than have them listen to 2 minutes of this just, woo, you know? I think it was brilliant, and I'm sure there's directors that are doing that more often. I am curious, so one of the I think a lot of musicians, we all had really cool experiences and things that stand out that were kinda like game changers or where, like, there was something that clicked. I mean, as you look back on, all of the cool experiences you've had with music, was there one that kinda stands out where you really feel like it may one of the most memorable things that's ever happened to you, in music or, where you had this moment or, just something that you feel like, "Man, that was if I was picking one, that's the one or that's the story that happened and made me realize, hey, I'm in the right place."
Yeah. Um I think that's maybe happened a few times. I mean, I still feel like I'm still so up and coming and I'm still such a
Mhm.
work in progress. Um
You'll feel that way in 30 years too. So
yeah, that's great. I love that. I I I think I think not to keep bringing up the project, but I think Gazer was that for me, in terms of just it was a film that I myself wanted to see, and so I think being able to work on a project that you had some creative liberties. I mean, I couldn't write anything I wanted, of course. Ryan was strict on like what he did and didn't want, but being collaborative in uh, with him was like an incredible moment. But I think an aha moment too was probably just like when I dove back into like the library and just decided to like I think I was a bit all over the place, and I think my aha moment came when I just said focus on music for media in any way you can, and that was like maybe 2016 or so, and I just hit the ground running. And after spending a couple of years just kind of spiraling, going all different places, it was like I started to see, oh, my royalties started to like, you know, climb a little bit. Like this, I learned I jumped into the industry. I went on a bunch of Facebook groups that are helpful. Um, I started meeting other composers, asking them questions about the world. Um, created spreadsheets of libraries that I felt like maybe I could write for, and so that was like the start of the aha moment for me. Um, I think focus is maybe something I lacked up until that point, and so it's helpful. That's been helpful for me is to just be anchored by something like a
yeah.
you see the next 5 years of your life. So
What as you're you know, you've done you've got all kinds of different music. So it's kind of one of you're not. I don't feel like you're a one genre guy like some people. I mean, you've just done a lot of different types of styles. Where do you find your inspiration to do the music you're doing? I mean, do you have some routine you go through? Do you go for a walk? I've heard what do you do to find that inspiration? Is it just when you get asked all of a sudden it's like, oh, I got to write for the song and it just hits you, in the time of need? What do you do there?
Well, I highly recommend going for walks since you brought it up. I think taking breaks, like getting out of your studio, um, that's like, I mean, as much as living in the studio is great because it's like the happiest place in the world for everybody that is able and lucky enough to create their own. I think you'll find that you'll burn out. And I think maybe for me, the key to writing good music is like living my life and seeing friends and reading books and watching movies and hanging out with, my girlfriend, and just getting away from it for a little bit helps you kind of focus and in the time that you are writing, it compartmentalizes you to do the best job you can. I mean, as far as like my inspirations for writing, it always depends on sometimes like the brief and what's asked of me. Whether it's a film, it's always about creating. If it's a film, it's always about creating something incredibly bespoke that only could live in this film. And it's a dance with the director and the producer to create something that is just like baked into the project, whether that's something super minimalist, whether that's something super maximalist, whether it's live, whether it's in the box, like that's the most important thing for me. So um I always wanna, make sure that like I'm talking about like the story with the director and we're not talking in musical terms, we're talking in emotional terms. Like it's my job to figure out what purple sounds like. And I love movies too. Like it's my favorite art form. So I spend a lot of time watching films, trying to kind of help learn the psychology of getting into a director's head. So that helps me as a composer see where they're at and their approaches to things. So I think if you're interested in film, if you're interested in indie film or even IPs and things like that, like go and watch movies. I mean, like it's a beautiful art form that is, one of the most it's like a football team, so many different moving parts. And I think when it comes to production music, it's about producing the best possible track and writing to maximize your income or your growth. You're writing something that you hope gets used for multiple different purposes, multiple different television shows. Um, so they're very different. They're very different jobs. Production music and scoring are very different. The only thing I think they share is maybe a producing angle, producing music and sitting and figuring out how to write and produce. But ultimately, I love production music because it keeps your skills sharp, and every day's a new adventure, like film is. But you're in, one day you're writing music like Tom Petty, the next you're writing this dark tension thing and trailer music and this, that, and the third. So I would say my only piece of advice for that would be like really just focus on what you do really well in that space. If it's
Yeah.
two or three genres that you excel at, like be the guy that does that or the girl or whatnot, who's like the guitar player that the library calls on, because being a specialist is great. They'll call you for that specific thing, and you won't just be a sea of other composers. You'll be the guitar person, you'll be the piano person, you'll be, yeah, like that's I think some advice. So that's kind of where I get my influence from. It's just
Yeah.
being inspired.
What I mean, the podcast is called Successful Musicians. With where you are today, what do you feel like? I mean, what defines successful musician to you?
I would say if I'm working on music every day, um, if I'm able to at least partially pay the bills through music, if I'm able to create lasting friendships with collaborators, other composers and directors, then I'm happy. And then I feel like that's successful. I think that it's it's a very difficult industry, and you have to be realistic to know that you're entering a very difficult industry with a lot of, moving parts and a lot of things to understand. But I would never, ever discourage someone from wanting to pursue it. I would, in fact, encourage them to do it and just set their realistic expectations for what they want. And if you're happy getting up every day and kind of working on your own schedule or the schedule that the production that you're working on has set out for you, and you're fulfilled by the work that you're doing, then I'd say you're successful,
Yeah.
and just stay on that track.
Well, and the thing that you didn't say, but you said it multiple times before earlier is make sure you're doing more than you're asked to do, like over deliver and just,
Yeah.
you know, do the things that the other people aren't going to do. Right. I think that's that thing that, just in our conversation, I can tell that's been the difference maker. And as I've talked to, dozens and dozens and dozens of composers, that seems to be a recurring theme that comes out, and I don't even think it's even a conscious thing that the people who are working in the industry more than others realizes, but I think it's just you take pride in what you're doing, and you're gonna make the extra effort, and you're gonna make it happen no matter what. So
Mhm.
that's amazing. Well,
100%.
Steven, if people want to go, people need to go check out this film Gazer. Just, it's an indie film. I know we'll put some links in the show notes. So I think I'm going to put the link to go listen to the soundtrack. Your kids will be freaked out for some of the tracks though. I'm just telling you right now that it's most excellent, but it's not going to be your relaxing meditative prayer type of music on several of them. Right. So, but you've got some great stuff as well, but we're going to put links in the show notes, but if people do want to go check out or find who you are, where can they go online to find that?
Yeah. You can find me on Instagram, on my website, stevematthewcarter.com. The film is called Gazer, gazerfilm.com. If it's playing near you, we've had a theatrical run here in the States, and we just opened in France. Yeah, I'm available, I'm around online, all the normal spots, LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook as well too. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for sharing some wisdom with people. And I feel like I've got a new friend as well. And keep doing the amazing stuff you're doing. A lot of times you're like, oh, this person's a TV person, sync person, or film. You've got a lot going for you. I'm impressed with the broad array of stuff that I've heard. So well done, and keep doing it. And thanks for sharing time and some advice with other people.
Thanks, Jason. Really appreciate you having me. And this is a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thanks. Hey, it's Jason here, and I hope you've gotten a lot of value out of this episode. Be sure to check out our show notes to learn more about our guest today, and if you'd like to support our podcast, there's a few things that you can do to help us grow. First, if you hit subscribe, it will help ensure that you don't miss a future episode. Second, if you'll share it with your friends on social media or send it via email or message, it helps us spread the word as well. And third, if you'll leave an honest review, it really helps with the algorithms so that other people can find our podcast. Finding success and fulfillment in the music industry is possible, and I look forward to seeing you on our next episode.